Welcome to the first SVP Dallas workshop, Building Organizational Capacity During the Times of Crisis. My name is Prisma Garcia. I'm the Director of Capacity Building for Social Venture Partners Dallas. SVP Dallas is a group of engaged philanthropists, and one of our core missions is to do pro bono consulting for social impact organizations. This is the first of many workshops, and we will have three organizations join us today. They are Roses Rojo, Faith in Texas, and Grant Halliburton Foundation. SVP Partners work with organizations in the community, and we like to work in partnership and have a shared understanding of the importance of building organizational capacity. We know that it's a different time during this pandemic, and so we wanted to host this session. We encourage social media during the session, and we'll start off with a quick lightning round of introductions by our SVP board members. I'll turn it over to Mary Jolonic to start introductions.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mary Jolonic, and I'm the former president and CEO of the Dallas Foundation. I retired 2 years ago, but I've kept my fingers in the nonprofit pie through being a board member of Dallas Social Venture Partners, Early Matters Dallas, Dallas Community College District Foundation Board, and several others. So hopefully I'm enough up to speed that I can help you all today with some of your questions. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Lyle.
Hi, I'm Catherine Glaze Lyle. I am a retired United Methodist pastor and someone who has been involved in civic engagement and philanthropy for many years. I'm on a number of boards, both local boards and one national board for nonprofits. I also hope that what I have to offer will be help to you. I'm glad to be here today. I'm an SVP partner. And I'm going to hand it over now to George Baldor.
Hi, I'm George Baldor, and I am the founder of After 8 to Educate, which is a collaborative effort to house homeless high school students that has been working directly with Social Venture Partners. And I look forward to sharing that experience with you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Louder. I've been a partner of SVP for about 2.5 years now. I've worked on projects with Grant Halliburton, Journey of Hope, and Poetic during that time. I have a business consulting firm called Louder Co., and we help companies find profits through artificial intelligence and better operations. And now I'll hand it over to my friend, Sherry Wolf.
Good morning, and thank you, SVP, and thank you, panelists. I'm looking forward to working with you today. I'm Sherry Wolf. I work for Dallas Capital Bank, and I specialize in middle market companies, both for-profit and nonprofit. I also have a family-owned business that we own and operate here in Dallas, so it gives me a unique perspective. I feel your pain. I know where you're coming from, and maybe there's some of our experiences that we can kind of share. So my main mission here is just to provide some help, always provide help. And I think and hope that today we can do that for you. Thank you, and look forward to talking. And with that, thank you. There you go, Terry.
Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Terry Connor. I'm a lawyer with Haynes & Boone. I've been a board member at SVP for 5 or 6 years now. I serve on the boards of several other nonprofits with a special focus on trying to improve the educational opportunities and outcomes for low-income kids, among other things. I think I'm helpful to our boards, in particular in matters of law, strategy, and governance. Look forward to talking to you all today. Michael or Andrew, let's see, we go to Michael Kornman next.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kornman. I've been an SVP partner for 3 years now. By day, I'm a private equity investor with NCK Capital, which focuses on lower middle market businesses here in Texas and all over the country. And I've been engaged with SVP on a lot of social enterprise work, and look forward to assisting today. I'd like to introduce Kimberly O'Neill.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly O'Neill. I'm a board member with SVP. I've been a partner since 2016. I support the Dana Jewett Residency Program, facilitating the monthly workshop on the intersection between government and politics. My background, I spent over 30 years between the nonprofit sector and local governments around the country. I'm a former city manager, and I look forward to supporting the conversation today by way of the focus around capacity building. That's my background. I'm also the CEO of the Giving Blueprint, in addition to a professor of political science at Collin College. And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Owen. I'm the immediate past board chair of SVP. Been a partner for about 6 years. My day job is that I'm an attorney and I represent primarily residential and commercial landlords. So I've spent about the past month or so helping those groups reframe their operations in light of COVID-19 and understanding their new obligations under federal, state, and local laws to address the pandemic. And I'm going to hand it off to Chris Krueger.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Krueger. I worked for 25 years in sales and marketing within the travel industry, including 4 years as Chief Marketing Officer for locally based Sabre. I retired about 5 years ago, and now I teach marketing at TCU. I also serve on a few nonprofit boards, including right here at Social Venture Partners, where I've been a partner for about 4 years. And I'm really looking forward to being an extra board member for you guys today, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lahari.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lahari, and I'm a board member of SVP as well. I've been a partner for almost about 2 years now. I own my own accounting and CPA firm that specializes in nonprofits and for-profits. So I'm looking forward to the board discussion today.
Thank you, SVP Board. Now I will pass it on to our nonprofit organizations. I mentioned them before. We will start off with Akila Wallace from Faith in Texas.
Good morning, and thank you, Prisma, Tony, and SVP Dallas for this opportunity. I'm Akila Wallace, the Executive Director of Faith in Texas and founding chair of Heritage Giving Fund at Texas Women's Foundation. Faith in Texas is a nonpartisan, multiracial, multi-faith grassroots movement of people united in values who are working together to achieve economic, racial, and social justice for all people. We engage people, communities, and voters through community organizing, civic engagement, and leadership development to create pathways of opportunity for all Texans to thrive. Our mission in the COVID-19 season hasn't changed. However, it's garnering more interest as clergy and community members are both positively and negatively impacted by decisions that are made or not being made by their elected officials. More people and institutions are seeking us out because we have a track record for successfully training everyday people to move policies, like yesterday's passing of an eviction ordinance in the city of Dallas, as well as our ability to turn out the vote. However, when I think about what keeps me up at night, besides knowing that undocumented Black and Hispanic families are experiencing the greatest losses, suffering, and oppression in this season, my concerns are that Faith in Texas will be overlooked for emergency funds during COVID or major funds needed to sustain us for the long haul. This is what keeps me up at night, and I'm deeply concerned about ensuring that those who are wanting to mobilize, impacting policy, and ensuring that our most vulnerable communities are protected and taken care of during COVID-19 and well beyond will be overlooked. And I want to ensure that we are here to stay.
Thank you.
And next, yes, Ibe, if you want to give your quick introduction now.
Yes, thank you so much, Prisma, and thank you, SVP.
partners and board of directors for this opportunity to share what we are doing, and the most important, to learn new ways to overcome the challenges that we are living. So Rosa es Rojo makes wellness and cancer prevention accessible for the Hispanic women in North Texas by educating them on the topics of nutrition, physical activity, emotional health, and positive thinking. We are using Spanish and culturally relevant content as part of our social innovation. Why cancer prevention? Well, according to American Cancer Society, cancer is the leading cause of death among Latinos in this country, and 1 in 3 Latinas living in this country will get cancer at some point. And also we know that Latinos are one of the largest group living in poverty, and that's why my community finds cancer late, when it is more expensive, costly, and treatment is less successful. On the other hand, we know that more than 42% of all cancer cases could be prevented if we only improve our lifestyle. That's why we at Rosa es Rojo believe in having a healthier lifestyle as a powerful tool for prevention. Today we know that 77% of our participants have reported that they improve resilience and well-being after participating in our wellness programs. Talking about the mission and the coronavirus crisis, we haven't changed our mission, but yes, I have to say that we have adapted ourselves in order to offer an effective response to this crisis for our Hispanic families. Dallas County confirmed Hispanics are the most affected by the virus, just followed by the African Americans, and we do not know for sure if all of them are having access to treatment. 42% of all Hispanics living in Dallas speak English less than very well. So we know that we need effective communication and trusted voices out there in the community now more than ever. Rosa es Rojo effectively provides wellness and prevention with culturally relevant content. So at this moment, we are acting as a cultural broker agency that provides education and resources to a community who is not getting enough information about how to prevent this coronavirus. We are adapting our cancer prevention curriculum in order to provide resources and education, and we are using our podcast and YouTube channel, one-on-one mentorship, using virtual resources, and we just released the first of 4 wellness guides with practical advice during this COVID-19 crisis. Our wellness workshops have started via Zoom, but we need to provide more tech support to our participants. COVID-19 has confirmed obstacles that my community is facing to access healthcare. So if I have to say 2 things that are keeping me up at night, I would say that the first one is social determinants of health, such as poverty, lack of social capital, legal status, and English proficiency. All of these things have remained, and the coronavirus just make them stronger. Hispanics have the highest uninsured rate in Dallas, and most of the Hispanic community, we depend on essential informal jobs. So that's one thing that is keeping me up at night. And the second one is that our ability as a small nonprofit and a startup nonprofit to keep fundraising for the core health need that we have identified in the Hispanic community as the first cause of death, which is cancer. Having said that, at the end, we still, of course, have hope to have a Hispanic community empowered enough to make healthier choices, and hope to become, all of us, active ambassadors of a healthier lifestyle among our communities, of course, to prevent COVID-19 and also cancer and other chronic diseases. So I'm gonna pass now to Grant Halliburton Foundation. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Hall. I'm president of Grant Halliburton Foundation. Grant Halliburton Foundation was established in 2006. Our mission is to strengthen the network of mental health resources for children, teens, young adults, promote better mental health, and help prevent suicide. That has always been our mission. And for purposes of keeping this brief, I'm going to focus on our 2 key programs that we have in place and how those have changed since the crisis started a couple of months ago now. Our first is education. We provide mental health awareness, suicide prevention curriculum, primarily in schools. It is typically a classroom by classroom type of program. We also work with a number of youth organizations. Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas would be one example. And to give you an idea of our reach, last year, 2019, we reached almost 50,000 people with our education programs. And again, that is mostly classroom by classroom. So we've got a pretty big team that goes out and does that. Obviously, when things shut down, that shut our education program down, because when the schools closed, we couldn't go to the schools. And I can tell you, initially, we were reaching out to schools to see if we could provide any assistance remotely. And frankly, the schools were focused on just trying to figure out how to connect with their students and give them basic education. So we backed off a little bit from that. But what it has given us an opportunity to do is we are working now to develop virtual presentations of all of our curriculum. We don't know what the future looks like. We don't know how accessible schools will be for us to get back in schools even this fall. So we're going to make sure that if people want to hear our programs, whether it's in person or virtual, we're going to be ready for them. So that is what we're doing now. Another program that we were in the early stages of is an abbreviated education curriculum for the faith community. We're hearing more and more from faith organizations that realize that they also need to address mental health with their youth, but they don't have a full day or every day of the week to talk to their kids. So we've been talking about creating 15 to 30 minute curriculums that we could provide to the staff and that they could actually take to their students and teach. So this has given us an opportunity to make a lot of progress in developing the abbreviated curriculum for the faith community. We ultimately envision that we will have probably 20 different curriculums in 15 to 30 minute segments that we can make available to the folks that are interested. And we are hearing more and more from those faith organizations. The good news we feel like is that we are just literally in the last couple of weeks, we are starting to hear back from some of our school partners who are beginning to ask to reschedule for the fall. They're going off of optimism that we will be able to get back together. So that's encouraging for our team to know that people are thinking about us again and wanting to get us back on the schedule come this fall. So that's education. The second big program for us is our Here for Texas mental health navigation line. And this is a service that we provide for people who are looking for mental health resources. And typically they don't really know what they're looking for. They don't know how to go about. And so we case manage and help people find the appropriate resources for whatever their individual needs may be. This is typically focused on families with kids who are struggling. But here's what's happened since the COVID crisis has begun. First of all, we had to move the program. We had to move it remotely. Everything was out of our office, so we very seamlessly transitioned to everybody working from home. We've also brought back in. We have a group of volunteers that helps take calls. Our entire staff is involved in taking shifts. And so throughout the day, we have people available. It's kind of a normal business hour type of program, Monday through Friday. But we have people every day taking shifts, taking calls, and helping people, assisting people find the resources they need. What I can tell you is that since this has started, our call volume is more than doubled, which is not surprising. I can also tell you that more than anything, the folks that need the most help, it's not actually as much the kids as it is the adults, the parents. We're finding more than ever, the adults are the ones who are struggling the most. So we're shifting to help really anybody who needs the help. The other thing that we've done is we partnered with the Dallas County Medical Society, because now we know that another group that is emerging as having real troubles with their mental health and their anxiety are the frontline workers, the folks in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses. And so through the Dallas County Medical Society, we've been able to partner and provide our information through their network to let the frontline workers know that if they need help, that we're here to help. We've also heard from a few hospitals, and we expect to hear from a few more to, again, make our service available and let everybody know that if they need help, that's what we're here to do. So that's really kind of where we are with the navigation line. In terms of what keeps us up at night or what keeps me up at night, the first thing I would tell you is we have had a lot of conversations with a lot of folks in the mental health space, and we all agree on one thing. The crisis of mental health and people who are struggling, we haven't even seen the beginning of it. It is yet to come. The worst is yet to come. We are trying to prepare. We're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But we all agree 100% that right now people are focused on basic needs. People are focused on food and shelter and their job, and their mental health challenges. While we're already seeing an increase, we're going to see a much bigger increase, and it's going to be long lasting. And so we have to really prepare for that. We have been working and talking to a lot of our partners. And I'll tell you something that's been very encouraging is we have a network within our database of about 900 mental health providers across North Texas. When all this began, we sent a note out to all of them and said, let us know what you're doing. Let us know what services you're providing. We also need to know if you have telehealth options, because we need to be prepared to help people who need help. And we heard literally within a few days, we heard from almost 200 providers who were basically saying, we're here to help. Here's what we're doing. In some cases, they're reducing their fees. In some cases, they're offering complimentary services. So that's all very encouraging. And I think the other thing for me that keeps me up at night is, short term, we are fine. We're here. We're going to be okay. I'm more worried, honestly, about the future. I'm worried about the end of 2020 and into 2021. I see all this money going out, which is so important right now, but I hope that down the road, there's still some left, because a lot of us are going to need some help 6 months from now, 12 months from now, whatever the case may be. And we're doing everything we can to stay top of mind with folks and letting them know we may not need you today, but we are going to need you in the future. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much. Thank you to all the organizations here today. I know that across the nonprofit sector, we are experiencing very similar symptoms and also just trying to plan for the future. And so I know that in terms of our audience today, I know that there are several nonprofits out there that are also experiencing these things that Faith in Texas and Rosas Rojo is experiencing. And so in terms of today's session, I do want to mention that we will have a format. We'll have a format that we'll try to follow as best as possible. I know that there's probably more questions than we had, and that all of us can have. And then also just in terms of like the organizations that are in the audience, we'll have room for questions. And so please understand that it's a mutual learning experience. And so we want to identify some of those key functions that and troubles that we're experiencing. And so we'll focus on 4 areas. That's governance, fundraising, capacity building, and strategic planning. And so in terms of those key areas, we'll have the different organizations, allow them a chance to hear what our board members have to say, but then also, leave room for that mutual learning. And so I think with this, I'm going to turn it over to Terry Connor, who's going to speak about governance, give a quick high-level overview, and then we'll jump right into questions.
Prisma, thank you very much, and thanks so much to the the heads of the nonprofits. Those were excellent presentations. Thank you all very much. I'm talking today about governance. I'll be honest, governance can be a dry topic, but I would also say that for nonprofits today, good governance can be the difference between failure and success. And it's really applicable to each of the next three areas that we're talking about. And so that's why we're kicking off with governance. There are several layers of governance. We'll touch on a couple of them, but today the most important is the fiduciary governing function of the board of directors and its collaboration with the chief executive officer or the executive director of the nonprofit. Board Source has come out with a recent article on governance in times of stress. They use the term constructive partnership between the board and the CEO, and I find that to be particularly helpful. The big emphasis, of course, is on complete and candid conversation to assure that your board or advisory group is informed, is engaged, and is helpful. And when we say helpful, what does that entail? It certainly involves the deliberation and decision-making that's so critical in times of change and stress. Also, your board should be out in the community and be able to bring back ideas, information, what they're hearing and seeing from others. And also, of course, their collective outreach in the community and their influence in the community. And that ties into fundraising as well, but it can also get into advocacy, et cetera. Very important, of course, and this gets into the construction of the board, but different board members should bring to the board table different skill sets, different perspectives, different experience. And we find that diversity and difference of views at the board table is not just good, but is essential, again, especially in times like this. Also, let me shift very quickly beyond governance function at that level. Governance can also should include the blocking and tackling of oversight, risk management, and compliance. Key areas can include financial oversight, employee relations, of course, and that's a big deal right now, employee relations, and also contract review and assessment. We'll hear a little bit more later about force majeure or act of God clauses, which everybody is now learning about. And finally, make sure you understand your bylaws. What is the role and authority of the CEO or the executive director, and also of committees. I'm a big fan of engaged committees to help with the governance function. Let me stop there, Prisma, if I may. Thank you.
Yeah, Terry, thank you so much for those comments. I think in terms of the organizations, I don't know if you have any immediate questions that come to mind. Otherwise, I'm sure that there are board members that would like to jump in and add to those comments you mentioned, Terry.
This is Kimberly. The one thing that I would like to add to governance, especially for smaller, newer organizations, it's about selection. And I think sometimes we select, newer organizations select board members to fill spots, but not to fill those spots with individuals who can help with it from a strategic perspective. And I think it's important to focus on finding the right people and not just increasing quantity on your board. That doesn't work if your board members don't have the connections that you need to grow. They are unsure of the responsibilities, the true responsibilities, the governing responsibilities of them as individual members. And those are some of the things that I've seen from a capacity perspective. Those are the things that I've seen a lot of organizations struggle with. They pick family members, they pick friends, they pick individuals who honestly don't want to. It's not that they can't, but they don't want to honor the financial commitment to the organization or want to do the work. And so those are the things that you really need to factor in when you're selecting. Identify the people that the skill sets first that you need to fill on the board. And once you identify the skill sets that you need for the board, then you go out and kind of use a matrix to identify who's good, better, best go for best first and then have some backup choices so that you're having a nice, robust mix of individuals based on inclusion from all different perspectives, including their professional expertise as well.
And that brings me to just wonder, I know that we heard the situations and what keeps you up at night, and I know all of us have something that maybe is, either personal or professional life that's keeping us up at night. But, I'm curious to hear from Aide and Akila and Kevin, maybe what experience have you had with your board during this time, or if you have any questions regarding what Kim and Terry have mentioned thus far.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Kevin. Akila. I'll just mention that I'm very grateful for our board. We have the majority of our board members just started in January, and as we had new terms. And I'm extremely grateful in the ways that they have stepped up to support me and the organization. Getting more engaged in the programmatic work that's taking place, showing up in the clergy organizing spaces, listening into various calls and webinars that Faith in Texas has hosted, as well as bringing their expertise and input into our board meeting spaces. Originally, we were scheduled to meet once a month. Since COVID, we're now having a call every 2 weeks, and with our board chair and a few select board members, especially our treasurer, they have really stepped in to ensure that we were able to quickly turn around the PPP application to seek out funding for the CARES Act, as well as our board chair, who is a physician, has offered to assist us in hosting a testing site in South Dallas. He's going to be bringing his team. So I'm really excited about the ways that they are going beyond governance and just stepping up in ways that support us and ensure that we are meeting the needs of our community right now.
Yeah, and I think what we've done is very similar. I think the most important thing is just constant communication. We actually had an interim board meeting 2 weeks ago. One of the big topics was the PPP loan discussion, which we've been fortunate to have received that. Give a shout out to Dallas Capital Bank, Sherry Wolf. But every week we don't necessarily have an in-person discussion, but at a minimum every week we're doing regular updates with the board on all the programs, where we're at, what we're doing, and most importantly, kind of just a financial snapshot of where we are with cash flow, our projections for our sustainability looking forward, and also beginning those discussions of 2021 and thinking about some of those tough discussions and just dealing with the reality that we have to consider worst case, and we may be working under smaller budgets in the future, next year, even later this year, and how do we get there? How do we accomplish fiscal responsibility? And obviously, for me, my number one priority is to keep our team, our staff on the payroll, because we do what we do. We can't do what we do without that. But at the same time, you've got to be realistic about looking down the road and how you sustain the operation. And there may be some tough decisions that come with that, but that's something we talk about every day.
Great. Thank you so much, Akila and Kevin. Aide, I don't know if you have a couple of comments to add.
I would just like to add, Prisma, when I was listening to Terry and Kimberly, thinking about if today is a good moment in order to recruit, to look for new board members. And I firmly believe it is. Rosas Rojo has a good and supportive board members, but we are also looking for new members. So in the middle of this crisis, I believe that we can find those leaders and those people committed to serve on board. So for me, that's a key message, that we need to take advantage of this situation in order also to bring new blood and more people to be committed in not only our board, but in different boards around nonprofits. in North Texas.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I guess with that, I don't know if any of our board members, SVP board members, have any have input on, is it a good time to recruit new members? It seems like all of our organizations here today have very engaged boards, or they've been in constant communication. But what does an organization do if they don't have an engaged board, or is it actually a good time to recruit new members? Terry, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Sorry.
One thing that certainly this crisis and the stress has helped or caused us to look at it are places where we do need to add capability or experience in the board. And so I think it's a difficult time to get people to come on to new boards. Most of the folks that you are looking for have other board memberships already, but I think trying to fill the gaps that are identified, including through this stress, I think is something that should be pursued. Also, recruiting new board members, as you all know, is a process, and you don't typically go out and have somebody come to coffee and then you engage, you get them to join the board on the spot. So the process of making sure more people who might be good board members in the future know about your mission and the impact that you're making, and the fact that you have a high quality organization. And obviously good board members like to join good boards, right? So introducing yourself to people and getting them teed up or positioned to possibly become board members in the future is also very important. Made more difficult by the fact that we don't sit down at Starbucks and have a cup of coffee together, right?
Yeah, Jennifer, if you want to jump in with some comments now.
I was just going to say, yes, it's a challenging time to recruit board members, but some people have more time now.
Yeah.
Working less or working remotely, not going to as many in-person events. This may be an opportunity for someone to really engage with you in a way they couldn't before.
Yep.
Prisma,
Yes, Catherine.
I'd like to emphasize the importance I think the board has in dealing with two levels of issues. One is the technical adaptive kind of stuff. And that's, you all three of you have talked about making technical adaptations to the way you're working. You get an obstacle put in your way and you go to work with known tools to figure out how do you make the adjustments to be able to continue. But Kevin, you particularly talked about trying to look ahead and say, what if the whole world has shifted here? And what if we can't go back to doing business the way we've been doing it before? And that is more the adaptive kind of problem. How do you face an obstacle and look at it in a whole new way that you really do have to change your very nature of how you do it? Doesn't mean you have to change your mission, but how you go about delivering and relating to people and to a situation. And I think the boards have a responsibility to do both of those things with their executive directors, and to think in terms of that long-term issue as well as the short-term issue. And if I know I chair the board of a community center in South Dallas, Dallas Bethlehem Center, and we have a lot of technical problems with the way we deliver services in this moment. A community center, when you can't have the community together, that's tough. But we have to spend some time in our get together, and we are doing an every 2-week Zoom call. Several of you talked about more frequent. That's not the way we've always met as a board, but that's what we're doing now, because we just think that's important to stay in touch. Communication clearly is so vital to this sort of thing. Anyway, those two levels I think are huge issues in governance at this time. It'd always be true, but it's particularly important now.
And if I
Thank you,
may,
Catherine.
If I may, I think the one thing here too is we can almost flip the model, right? Before you were pressing your needs. Now I would want and hope that board members are staying up at night and worrying on your behalf, finding out what they can do, calling, engaging. And it's a great opportunity for us to find the skill sets of board members, because we know that half of them are always involved and there's always going to be some that are not. Those are precious moments to be able to help our community in those board meetings. And you want people that are totally engaged and passionate about what you do. So they're calling, you and saying, I need to be involved with this. I need to see you strategically here in 5 years. What is it going to take? I am your boots on the ground. And this moment of crisis, I think, really helps pronounce a lot of those things and characteristics for the future for you.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. I know that we have a couple other comments from other members, but if we can hold those, and they might come up in the next section. I do want to go to fundraising, because I know that in all of the questions that we received from nonprofit organizations during this time, and even from our three advisees that we have on today's call, fundraising is a key function of nonprofits. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary to just give a couple comments, and then I know that there are definitely questions in this area.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to start out today with giving you a couple of resources for you all to look into. The first one is northtexascares.org. And a group of foundations, about 15 last time I looked, have gotten together. It is not a pooled fund. What they have done is they have a common application. So what you as nonprofits do is go to northtexascares.com, download the application, and then fill it out. And then all of the foundations that are members are looking at this, they can all look at the same applications. And it means that actually you can get a grant from more than one foundation. That's not disallowed. So if a foundation looks at your application and feels like it's something they want to fund, they can do it. So also, just make sure it has to come from a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Obviously, it's not for for-profits and it's not for individuals. But anyway, it is a good way for a group of foundations to look at a group of applications. The second thing, second organization that I wanted to highlight is Better Together Fund. And again, it is bettertogetherfund.org. And what the mission of Better Together Fund is to support formal, long-term collaborations for organizations with compatible missions. Now, this is a pooled fund. A group of foundations have gotten together and they have each put in a certain amount of money, and they all decide together who gets the grants for the Better Together Fund. And I just got an email from them yesterday that said that the Better Together Fund is open to reviewing collaboration proposals of an urgent nature on a rolling basis. So if you feel like that there's some collaboration with another nonprofit that you would like to move forward, the Better Together Fund is a way to do that. Also, just before I turn it over to Catherine to give a few opening remarks, I want to give you all a bit of my philosophy on fundraising, which is that fundraising is personal and fundraising is storytelling. So in this time, everyone is worried about their finances. Foundations are worried about the amount of grants that they can give. High net worth individuals, I mean, everybody is worried about their finances. So you have to make them care about your organization and how you are helping your clients. So the more personal the ask, the better. You have to give examples of how you are helping your clients. And that's where the storytelling comes in. Don't just talk at a high level about what you do. I mean, you can certainly talk about that, but make that shorter. Really emphasize what it is that you are doing for your clients and tell those stories, because that's what people react to. That's why they'll give to you. So I'm going to stop there because I know there'll be some questions later on, but I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Glaze-Lyle to say a couple of things before we start answering questions.
This will be quick. The first thing I want to say is start with your existing donors. Don't forget them. Communicate with them, communicate with them, communicate with them. You don't have to tell them it's an emergency. They know that. So tell them what you're doing and how you've shifted. Show them that you are staying abreast of what is going on and that you are reaching out. If the numbers, Kevin, have gone up so much on calls and requests for help, document that and then share that with your donors. Mm-hmm. It's easier to keep a donor than it is to get a new donor. Right.
That's so true.
And so make sure you are staying in touch with your existing donors. I can't say that enough times. I think really all of you are in the same sort of spot in a way, in that you are not providing frontline services directly applicable to COVID-19. Now, I'm not saying your positions are unimportant in relationship to this, but you're not taking care of sick people. You're not feeding people who have lost their jobs. What I think you have to do is figure out how you can make the case for the fact that what you do really does matter, that it changes policy, it changes all the socioeconomic, racial dynamics of what is going on, which to many of us seem to be so obviously unfair, and yet that's not obvious to everybody. And so there's big communication issues but you have to be able to say, okay, we're not frontline support, but what we're doing is even more basic than that. And it has to, that work has to continue. That's an easier case to make with somebody who already understands you. So I'd really go back to what I said to start with. Please pay attention to your existing donors. Please communicate with them. I know you're not sending out a lot of mail, and my email inbox is just crammed.
It's full.
Yeah. But still, do the best you can. If you have cell phone numbers, send a text. Just quick. Anyway, that's where I would start. Prisma?
So in terms of questions, I think I'll pass it on to the nonprofits.
Okay.
Hi. So, Catherine Glaze-Lyle, you've already touched on, some of the responses that I needed for my question, but I just want to make sure I lift up, that Faith in Texas, we were blessed to have started transitioning to digital organizing in early March. Without knowing, we would be forced to work from home weeks later. The costs that we have, along with these costs, with transitioning to digital organizing, along with staff salaries, because I have an amazingly talented team who we pay based on their worth, as well as the benefits that we provide for them. That makes up the majority of our operating budget. And when funders ask, what do you need right now during COVID-19? I primarily say I need money to cover majority non-programmatic costs, which may include, ensuring that we have a robust communications, that we are able to purchase advertisements on a variety of ethnic social media platforms, that we are able to provide technology to those who are from low-income communities or likely unemployed, so that they are able to quickly text and email and just activate, actions to contact their elected officials or be able to attend city council meetings remotely, as well as just ensuring that, we're able to provide stipends as many of our staff and volunteer organizers are facing increased cost associated with, now many of them had to get internet services they didn't already before. I looked at my electric bill and it's definitely much higher, as I'm sure many others are. As well as, those of us who are parents and we have children or we have elders that we are caring for, and the increased cost of caring for them pretty much 24/7 now during this season. All of this, which equates to significant operating costs. And so for me, I'm looking for, suggestions on how do me and my development team continue to make the case for major giving from individuals and corporate family foundations during this time, because the work that we are doing in digital organizing does have direct impact on families. As I mentioned, the passing of that eviction ordinance for the city of Dallas will ensure that thousands of Dallas residents are not fearful of being evicted because they're unable to pay their rent in this season, which would ultimately contribute to our already very dismal homelessness population that we have here in Dallas. It as well as how we are working diligently to address the potential for mass spread in our Dallas County jails, because we recognize that this is a public health crisis, and making sure that even those who are incarcerated, that they are still seen as humans and are able to maintain their dignity, and that they receive quality care and are able to participate in social distancing in the way that all of us have the luxury who are outside of the cages in Dallas County, as well as in thinking through our undocumented people who aren't qualified, who are eligible to get government assistance in this season, but who are still having increased costs, just like all of us, and have lost employment or income from employment services. So for me, how do we continue to make the case for how we're making a direct impact on the lives of so many people so that we can get sustainable income or revenue for the organization?
Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I think you just did it. Mm-hmm. I think you tell the story. I think Mary was right. You tell the story. You figure out where is it that you've made an impact, and you tell that story. And you say, in order to do this, here's the real cost. And figure in the cost of, it would be interesting to do a study of your expenses and your staff time and all the related costs that can be attributed to what you did in terms of the eviction change, the law, the ordinance change. And to be able to say, we did this, it cost us this. Mary, what do you,
I was going to say, I agree. Specifics, really give specifics. It costs us this much. And this is why I'm asking you for this kind of support right now. So, it's really telling the story, being specific, and people will respond. I think especially, as Catherine said earlier, your donors, your current donors who already know what you do, you can be even more specific with them. You don't have to explain, spend a whole lot of time explaining exactly what your mission is. What you need to do is say, these are my needs and this is what I need right this minute. Could you give an extra 100, an extra 500? Ask for a certain amount of money. I think that's always good.
Thank you so much.
Let's see. One question that I think we kind of need to talk about or address is that there are organizations that were lucky enough to get a PPP loan, but they may not have operational revenue or any other supplementary revenue to offset what happens after that runs out. What's some advice that some of these organizations can get from our group to be able to address their true fundraising needs outside of the PPP loan?
I would just say again, say we got this loan. I mean, you have to be truthful and you have to be straight with your donors and say, we got this loan. This will last us for 2 more months or whatever it is. What are we going to do after that? I always feel like that don't try and spin everything better than it is. I mean, just go ahead and say what the situation is. What is it that you need now? And then ask for it. Others?
I totally agree with that. Please don't be afraid to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, please be afraid to not tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And just lay it out there. Tell it in a story. Make it as personal as you can make it. Make it as specific as you can make it. But make it as truthful. And I know we're not going to get political, but truth matters.
It does.
Truth matters. And people can tell if you're telling the truth. Over time, people will know whether you're being honest with them or not.
And Catherine,
yes.
With that, after you make those comments, I would like Chris Krueger to just jump in, because I think everything you're saying about truth and does apply to marketing. So I just wanted to just get a quick read on what Chris is thinking about how do we tell that truth, and maybe there's some marketing techniques. But
Chris, go for it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in there. Yeah, I was going to raise a couple of these in the strategic planning section when we get there, but I'll go ahead and bring them forward. I think, all three of you, as you guys were jumping in and discussing your situations, you were doing a really good job of explaining that in a short period of time. In my view, that you got to get even crisper on your storytelling. We all do. And you got to be able to come in and reinforce the mission, but adjust it to this new environment, this new coronavirus environment. And so, I think Kathleen mentioned it earlier about, not being technically on the front line. It's going to drive you to, have to tell your story in a certain way. And what I would, back to truthfulness, I would figure out a way to very credibly position yourself as being on the front line. Maybe not as a healthcare worker or something like that, but certainly each of your areas that you're focused on plays a critically important role in the recovery that we're all going to need to go through. And so as I think about your three different organizations, getting really crisp on your brand voice, and you use that in lots of different places. You use it to instill direction for your teams, direction for your clients, and you use it to instill confidence in your donors so that they invest in you. And so I don't know if these are the right words or the right crisp messages, but as I thought about each of your three organizations, I think that it's something along these lines. So for you, Akila, at Faith in Texas, look, this coronavirus has exposed inequities in our system, inequities in finance, healthcare, and education. And that's what we do. We focus on addressing inequities. Bam. Something like that is a crisp brand message that you can then go and deliver a more expanded story to your different audiences. Roseas there, Roja, look, cancer doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped here. And in fact, this environment of coronavirus has exposed the inequities in helping people address their wellness in cancer. So that's what we're here to do. Faith in Texas is to address those inequities, educate, keep fighting the cancer fight. Something crisp like that. And for you, Kevin at Grant, I know your advertising background, you're probably better at this than me. But look, I would argue I have a daughter who has anxiety, has battled that anxiety. You are on the front line. a byproduct of this is a frontline mental illness issue. And so you have the coronavirus is accelerating anxiety, and it's important for us to continue our battle. So whatever it is, whatever you guys decide, I think that's critically important, is to come up with that 1 or 2 sentence crisp message that then will feed your storytelling. Again, create direction for your teams, create direction for your clients, what they can expect from you, and building confidence in your donors. And from there, you can expand and do some of these other things, planning for fundraising, planning for strategic planning, those kinds of things. So I'll come back to that when we get to strategic planning.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I know that, we can spend a whole webinar on fundraising itself. And so it's so critical to our nonprofit landscape, but also just during this time, we need to fill the needs. But with that, I still want to move on to some of the other topics. We have 2 others to cover, which is capacity building and strategic planning. And I know, just given the time, I want to kind of try to have a conversation about these. And I know that there are a couple of board members that have some comments prepared. So maybe I'll pass it over to Kim and Sherry, who maybe have some high-level overview, but then I do want to get to some of these questions. And Andrew, we'll come back to you as far as technology, because I know they're waiting to hear about that.
So I'll keep my prepared remarks very brief so that the organizations have an opportunity to ask questions. I will start off by saying this. Capacity building is about your foundation of your organization. And the example that I always use is program and services is the 2nd floor of your house. And you cannot get to the 2nd floor without first making sure that the 1st floor is solid. And a lot of times when smaller, newer organizations are trying to establish themselves in the community, they focus so much on the mission-driven programs, they forget to keep the house in order. And the house is not going to be in order if you can't even get into the front door. And so as you are trying to, from a capacity perspective, as you're trying to build and ensure that you're still representing and adhering to your mission, don't forget the back office of all of the work that still has to be done, and it still has to be in order. And I'm going to put a comma on this and just add to the very first section that we were talking about when it came to governance. If you are actively looking for board members, you have to be transparent about what's happening in the house. You can't look for the greatest if the greatest isn't happening at home and you're not being transparent, so those accepting that responsibility actually know what they're walking into. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sherry and then the organizations.
Kim, I think I was stealing and peeking over your shoulder as you wrote those notes. So I was also thinking about that, maybe because I'm in my house right now. And I believe that one of the essential skills in any organization, whether you're a small business, nonprofit, or a family, is collaboration. I cannot tell you that one person cannot do it all. So the house scenario is fabulous because I feel like there are so many active and moving parts within each of your organizations that you have to rely and collaborate with each other. And it gets everybody excited because, one, you've made your mission statement, but also I would like to complement that with, I'm a banker, so I'm all about KPIs. I love hearing those numbers. They motivate me. I'm an emotional person, don't get me wrong, but when you can start wrapping some financial numbers around things for me, that makes me not only emotionally invest in you, but I can then financially invest in you. And that means for every dollar that I give to you, you're gonna do X amount with that. And, one of the other things I'm going to just say is my dollar for my groceries, it's getting stretched right now, right? Same for all of us. So then my whole idea is then how do you then make sure that that dollar works for everybody well? And in a crisis, it's showing up. My weak points in my family are showing up all the time. So I need to really get process management going, kind of figure things out there so that when that bubble comes through, right, because it will, we're only seeing the beginning of it, there's going to be a bottleneck somewhere. It's our job as members of this community to eliminate the bottleneck so it stays as smooth as it can so that you can reach your mission. And with that, I'll defer and wait. But
yeah, thank you, Sherry. In terms of questions, I know Rosas Rojo submitted several questions before this webinar about fundraising, and a lot of the other organizations and even the audience share some of those same questions. So I don't know if you want to jump in with a couple of those questions. And I know one is specific about technology and certain communities that maybe don't have access to technology. And I would like Andrew Lauder to respond to this question in particular.
Thank you, Prisma. Yes, one of the questions that I would like to ask is based on a real challenge that we are facing right now, that is with the minority population that we serve. I would say that they have the devices to be connected for example, an online class for our workshops, but they lack the tech skills and the know-how to be able to use the platforms available. And I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about platforms like Zoom, Google Suite, Dropbox, and so on. So for those working with minorities, we didn't have the time to prepare our clients for this, I would say, abrupt need of being tech savvy. So my question to you is if you could foresee any collaborations between nonprofits working in technology and nonprofits working with minorities in order to develop tutorials in their own language to help close this gap. Or maybe this is sounds more like a proposal than a question, but I would love just to hear what could you tell us about it.
Yeah, glad to cover that, Aide. So a couple of things there. You mentioned kind of the fact that they lack these tech skills and know how to use the platforms available. I'd say, I kind of hesitate to say this being a kind of a technology advocate, but I'd say take a few steps back. If they lack those tech skills, go back to basics. Just maybe start with the phone call. Don't necessarily push them toward utilizing Zoom or Google Hangouts, anything like that. Just get them comfortable with the phone situation. Once you get them there, you have an opportunity to talk them through what those tech challenges are. You can address those issues. You can start talking through how to address those. A couple of things too that kind of came to mind. I play a lot in the artificial intelligence space, and there's a lot of tools out there nowadays that are relatively inexpensive, if not free, especially through this COVID pandemic, that have opened up to help with things like translation services. So if you have videos that are in English, you can run them through and they'll translate them to Spanish. If you were to create your own videos, that translation service is there as well. There's chat tools that can be leveraged rather inexpensively that can serve to address questions or needs that your constituents may be having, and those can also be typed out and answered in various languages as well. And so I'd encourage first, start with the basics, get them comfortable with just the phone calls, maybe getting them into a FaceTime call or a Skype call, one-on-one if needed. Go deeper with them and kind of showing them the tools. And keep in mind, it's a bit of a crawl, walk, run stage. I kind of think about my own mother. She's Peruvian. And she, when you're talking about these people, I kind of think of her. And so I kind of, that'd be the approach I would take with her, right? It's just kind of a little bit more hand holding, be patient through this. It's not necessarily an opportunity to think speed at this point. I think it's more kind of comfort and understanding, so then they can excel throughout the rest of the program that you're developing.
And to add on to Andrew, I think that this is also an opportunity to ensure that the challenge that you've identified is brought to mainstream. a lot of times when we're talking about the issues within marginalized communities, we limit it to limited access to Wi-Fi and may not have a computer. But if you have Wi-Fi and you have a computer, but you don't know how to use the tools that are in front of you, there's still an issue and a disconnect. And I think that for organizations that are seeing these types of issues, this is something that you begin to be able to take it and bring it out so other organizations can know that this too is a problem. Maybe they can add on to that. But then the people that impact policy and work in these corporations will now hear it's not just about getting Wi-Fi into a neighborhood. There are some other resources that we all need to collectively look at. So this is a great opportunity when we're talking about capacity, that capacity is not just about the back house being in order, but it's about making sure that your mission-driven work, that you're trying to eradicate something. Whether or not it ultimately happens tomorrow is not the issue. It's about how do you ensure that every resource that you have and all information and data is being used to impact the work that you're trying to do. And so sometimes capacity building is also linked to policy as well. And I think Faith in Texas does a great job with that, but sometimes it goes beyond, I have this information and let me figure out how to fix it, but I need to tell everybody about this problem so collectively we can try and fix it, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Are there other capacity building related questions from either of our other organizations? Do you have any others?
So Kim, I think with that, we can move to strategic planning. I know that we're running short on time, and I know with technology, you know, we mentioned I heard parts of that. We mentioned the actual access, and sometimes it's just the availability. You know, I live in Southern Dallas, and my internet is in and out. So it really is just, you know, what we have access to. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris, and I know Jennifer has a couple of comments, and there are a couple other board members we haven't heard from. So, you know, if you could jump in during this section, that'd be great.
All right. Well, I'll kick us off here. As I mentioned earlier when I jumped in, there's strategic planning has a key element of your brand voice. So I won't go into the detail on that. But obviously, in normal times, you know, balancing your day-to-day with strategic planning, long-term strategic planning is already hard in normal times, right? Balancing fundraising and your operational, your impact delivery capacity, all those things, and then trying to carve out time to think longer-term strategic planning. It's already hard. And so you throw in a time of crisis and it's even harder to do. But I would argue, and I think many of us have already talked about a little bit, that finding that time to focus on the long term, continue doing that strategic planning is now more important than it ever was even before. So before we get to sort of any specific questions that you have on it, just kind of 4 thoughts on what it'll take as you continue to think about strategic planning during this time of crisis. One is you will have to carve out time. If you don't, your day-to-day is going to consume you naturally. It's just naturally you're trying to keep things afloat. And so you're going to have to systematically carve out some time, whether that's in the morning when you think best or at night when you're a little worried before you go into bed, whatever it is, carve out that time and do it not just yourself, but with your teams as well. The second thing we already spent time on, and that is focusing your brand voice. It's going to be really important for the short-term needs you have, but also that longer-term planning that you're going to do. Chris, that voice modified for what's happening with the coronavirus, I already talked about it. It builds credibility for what you're doing. It provides directions to your team, to your clients, and confidence for your donors. So that's part of strategic planning, is getting that message really crisp. The third thing, and is you're going to have to spend time doing scenario planning. I mean, there was so much scenario planning that had already taken place that didn't contemplate this. Well, it highlights how important it is to stretch yourself in doing scenario planning and looking out into the future, whatever that looks like for you, 6 months from now, 3 years from now, but just lay out those different scenarios that your organization in the area that you're looking to impact, how it plays out. And as you come up with those different scenarios, then that next step is what's critical is, what's your roadmap? What would your roadmap be underneath each of those scenarios? How does the mission change if it does at all? What happens to your services in your portfolio? What does your operating model look like? What does your impact model look like? Funding, what does your organization look like? What does your budget look like, right? You'll come up with sort of each of those under these different scenarios, and it just gets you in a position to be ready for whatever outcomes come. And that takes a lot of time. And then the fourth thing that I would add here is that be ready underneath that different scenario planning to accelerate some transformational ideas. I think each of you have probably thought in the past, how can I transform this? What kind of opportunity might I have to transform? Well, now's the time potentially to accelerate some of those transformational ideas. In some cases, it's existential. It's not just about opportunity. It's about keeping you relevant and in existence. So that changes the priority of some of those transformational ideas. And then quite candidly, I think it also becomes part of your core fundraising message as well, is people are going to look to continue donating, potentially donate new when they know that something is happening that is maybe different than the way you were operating in the past. So all of that kind of flows up under what I would characterize as strategic planning, and maybe that sets the stage for some questions. So, I don't know, Terry, if you, Jennifer, if you had some additional comments, but we can certainly get to your questions here in a second.
Sure, thanks, Chris. I'm going to keep mine brief. This is first and foremost a public health crisis, so you need to think about how you change your operations to address that, so that you protect your employees, the clients you serve, and the public. You've probably been doing that already, but we're getting ready to transition from shelter in place to phased reopening. What does that look like for your organization? And sadly, I think you may find some public health officials and some government officials in conflict. So I think you need to pick whatever reference point, local official that knows your community the best, or public health official that you're going to follow their guidance. And this is a place where you can engage with your board on what does that new operational plan look like. The other thing to think about, I know a theme running throughout this morning has been the financial stress that you're under. So as an attorney, I'll just mention briefly, your biggest monthly expense after payroll may be your physical locations. You have leases or mortgages. So if you have a mortgage, you need to be talking to your lender. You may be entitled to forbearance. If you have a lease, you need to look at your lease and see if it has some force majeure or act of God clause that says in these extraordinary circumstances, you may be excused from doing the things like paying rent that you would otherwise have to do. Although I'll caution you, a lot of force majeure clauses specifically exclude rent. But this is still a time where just from a business perspective, you have some leverage and you may be able to engage in some negotiations with them to get you some short-term and longer-term relief. And then I know Michael Kornman wanted to hop in here with some financial planning questions, so I'm going to pass it off to him.
Thanks, Jennifer. One of the things that we found is a valuable tool during this unusual time in in the for-profit world is a simple 8 or 13-week cash flow forecast. There's a lot of questions here today about fundraising, short-term needs for cash, and if my suggestion is that a simple 8 or 13-week cash flow forecast for your organizations would be helpful to enhance that story, to tell your donors about the urgent need. And it doesn't have to be an accountant level, work product. It can just simply be what revenue you have coming in, what your expenses are on a weekly basis, and forecasting that out for the next 8 or 13 weeks. And this is something that we've used in this unusual time in a lot of organizations to help us understand and get our head around what's happening in a fast changing environment. And it's a great tool that would be applicable to a nonprofit for short-term fundraising.
Thank you, Michael. I know that looking at the time, we have only a few minutes. I know some of the audience, we've answered some of the questions throughout, but I did want to pass it on to George, who I don't think we've heard much from today. And Lahari, maybe you have something else to add. And I know some of our questions from the nonprofits have been, answered to some degree. So George, I know you have a question maybe to everyone, or maybe just to the nonprofits, but go ahead.
Great, thank you. Part of the strategic planning, as we've heard, is thinking in the new ways and thinking broader than maybe we have in the past. With so many nonprofits that are serving the same communities and in very particular ways, but sometimes also overlapping with other nonprofits doing very similar work, would you consider a merger or maybe a collaboration with other nonprofits that would doing similar work so that you can have one stronger organization rather than 2 or 3 weaker organizations that may not be able to survive this financial crisis?
This is Mary. Can I just say that is the mission of the Better Together Fund. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean merger. It can mean collaboration. And so bettertogetherfund.org, if you all have any ideas that you might want to go down that path that George just talked about, please go to that website and see.
Thank you. I know looking at the time, we have about 9 minutes. Aide, Akila, Kevin, I know I want to allow you to ask another question if you have one. Otherwise, I'll take a question from the audience.
I do have one question, and it's getting back to fundraising for a second, and it's getting fairly tactical. But kind of back to, what keeps us up at night. A lot of us have various fundraisers throughout the year. A lot of those fundraisers involve being together. And in my case, in our case, we have a big event that is typically in November. We have about 500 people. We have a band, we have dancing. That may or may not be realistic. We just don't know. And so what we're seeing across the community and across really the country as virtual fundraisers. And I understand that that's right now today, that is the practical approach, but I also try and put myself in the shoes of an attendee of an event. And it's hard for me to get excited about a virtual fundraiser that traditionally is something like a big event at a venue and a lot of fun. And so what I'm thinking about and what I'm looking for is, on one end, you have your traditional event, and on the other end, you have a virtual fundraiser, which may not be all that exciting, and we're all going to get really tired of them, quite frankly. So there's got to be something in between. There's got to be something that takes into account social distancing. There's got to be a happy medium. It's not one extreme or the other, and I don't know what that is yet, but I think if we can figure that out, that'll be a lot more appealing going forward for a lot of nonprofits who put on events. And anybody that has any ideas now or tomorrow or next week, I'm all ears, because I'm searching for that happy medium.
Does anybody want to take that call? Catherine, I think you had an answer for that one.
Catherine, you're muted.
Thanks. I don't think there's a magic answer for that one, Kevin. Clearly, people can talk about small group events. There could be small events that could be considered over a period of time. But we're going to get back to the place where we can have big events. There will be, at some point, a vaccine for this disease, and I'm going to be right there ready to get the shot the minute it's available. And if you're not, then I'm going to be on your case saying, get it, because it matters to me and it matters to my grandkids and it matters to everybody in our community that we all do that.
I'll be right behind you.
Yeah, I mean, so it will come back. So I think that's a part of the truth telling. This is a thing that's happening now, and we have to deal with it. And it's going to last longer than, you remember when this first started? It was like, in 2 weeks, this is going to be over. Yeah, no, it already isn't. And so, but it will get over, and we'll be able to go back and have our events. So don't panic. I guess that, Mary, do you have anything else?
The only thing I would say is to get in touch with other nonprofits and just put out the question. Do you all have any other suggestions? And you can always learn from other people that do the same kind of thing that you do. And just say, somebody come back to me with what you've done.
Yeah. And I would also add, this is Chris, very short term, I would also urge you to push the envelope on the online concept. I know it's non-traditional. We've grown up in this model of event fundraisers, but we're in non-traditional times. And there's a lot of things that have moved non-traditionally, right? I'm delivering my TCU class in a non-traditional format. My daughter's going to graduate in a non-traditional format. So I think you're going to get some permission from your audience to do something non-traditional. And then I think the other thing, and I know this may feel a little Pollyanna, but remember, the people that were at your events were there primarily for the cause. Yes, there was a party around it, but for the cause. And I think you can appeal to that with your storytelling, saying now is more important than ever, and then figure out really creative ways to recreate the best you can. And hopefully it's a one-off, but it's a bridge to a brighter future there. And again, I know that sounds a little Pollyanna, but it is. I think it's time to lean into some of these things and just try something new.
Right. Thank you, Chris. With that, I know that we're close to time, so I think thank you so much, board members. I know that there have been some questions from the audience, and some in particular about technology, so I think Andrew might get to those, in terms of what are some low-cost solutions to technology, and I think we can provide some of those responses in a follow-up, because I know that most of our companies have been providing some free access or expanded access to some services, for example, like Zoom and some of those others. So with that, Andrew, if you have a couple comments to say about tech, we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I'll hit on the free or low-cost translation tools. There's one product called Amara. It's AMARA.org. You go there, they have a free offering to translate your videos. They even offer a tool for self-translation. Another one, if you already have your videos posted on YouTube, you can always go into YouTube Studio, which will then either allow you to translate it yourself or open it up to the YouTube community to basically crowdsource that translation for free. Another one that's a little bit more expensive is called rev.com, REV.com. They'll turn videos around for you in as little as 24 hours. They do a good job. It does cost a little bit more, but it's worth exploring.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to our organizations. I know that we had limited time, and all of these big topics could essentially be their own webinar. And as I mentioned before, this is the first of several workshops that we will host. And so, we're definitely going to continue to work with Rosas Rojo, Faith in Texas, Grant Halliburton Foundation, and we will continue to provide that support, but also learn from you, because I think that all of us on this call and in the audience have learned something so valuable. And you're really the ones in the trenches with the community. And so we will definitely be following up with all of you organizations, but then also for those in the audience, pro bono consulting is something that SVP does. And so it's definitely, we're an organization that can provide that. And so please feel free to reach out. But also if you're a person that has the skill sets that could potentially bring an offering to nonprofit organizations. You know, also SVP is a community of business leaders that can provide pro bono consulting for organizations. So there are so many ways to help, you know, and I know that this isn't just immediate help, this is also long-term help. So with that, you know, I thank you. I want to make you know, reminders as far as like so many other events we have coming up. One big one is the Thinking Globally, Acting Locally Leaders Response webinar we have next Thursday. So it'll be next Thursday at 1:30. And if you look at our social media pages, you can follow us, and then you can sign up to register via Zoom. We'll have some amazing speakers, Judge Clay Jenkins, Dr. Michael Hinojosa with DISD, St. Marshall with the Dallas Mavericks, all leaders responding. And with that, I would like to thank the panelists, everyone I know didn't have a chance to share all of your wisdom and nonprofits this conversation in upcoming webinars. Thank you so much to the audience, and we will see you again soon.
Hi, everybody.